Hi, this is Stephen from Owner Disown. In today's video, I am reviewing the new HP Pavilion Gaming 16 and, as its name suggests, it has a 16.1-inch 144Hz IPS display that fits right between the 15-inch and 17-inch panels that we are used to seeing. For those that feel that a 15-inch laptop is too small to game on, but feel that a 17-inch can be a little bit unwieldy, I do feel that the 16.1-inch is a great compromise and hope to see more like it. Now, Amazon sells my unit for $1,140 and HP often has sales. It was actually recently available for $999 and I have a link for those in the description below. Personally, I think if you can get it for under $1,000, that does represent good value, as not only do you get a good screen, but you also get a 10th gen i7 10750H CPU, the GTX 1660Ti Max-Q graphics, 512GB NVMe SSD, and 16GB of DDR4, 2933 Mhz RAM in dual channel. I have already tested 12 games in a separate video, so make sure to watch that, but suffice it to say, it does game well. With the CPU pulling about 45 watts and the 1660Ti Max-Q about 60 watts, the thermals don't get too high. You may see it hit about 90 degrees occasionally, but on the most part, it stays in the mid to low 80s. And this is with a fairly low fan noise at load of about 47 decibels, so it makes for a very well balanced gaming laptop. A laptop that isn't going to overly disturb people in the room with you. In terms of performance, it is about 12% behind a full-powered GTX 1660Ti and 10% ahead of the GTX 1060. But you are still going to get over 60 FPS at 1080p with max settings in most games, and for those that want to maximize the frame rate to make use of that 144Hz panel, lowering quality settings does see good scaling. Unfortunately, undervolting the CPU was not possible, and increasing the PL1 from 45 watts to say 55 watts had no effect, as the BIOS made the CPU drop to 45 watts anyway. But you can overclock the GPU. Here's Overwatch with a 156 MHz boost to the GPU, and we do see a slight benefit. You can be a little bit more aggressive should you wish, and in some games this may be of use to increase the 1% lows like we saw here in Overwatch, which was a 5% improvement. Many people also use their laptops to stream games, so let's see how it gets on. So just doing a quick test streaming the HP Pavilion 16 with it's got an i7 10750H CPU and a GTX 1660Ti Max-Q. I'm actually not only streaming it to Twitch, but I'm also recording it on a local machine. Frame rate's still good, clock rates are fine, I'm getting no lag whatsoever. Pretty decent. HP have set up the Pavilion so that it basically is a plug-and-play device. There's no different power modes or fan control, so it is ideal for those just wanting a laptop that is competent at most tasks with no tweaking needed, and there's a lot to be said about such a system. In that regard, it is ideal for the non-enthusiast, and they don't have to worry about thermal throttling or loud fans. So with that in mind, the CPU performance is on the low end, and will even be beaten by most 9th gen 9750H CPUs. One good thing though is that it maintains the same level of performance throughout. There is no worry about performance dropping off the longer the workload is, plus if your software can make use of Intel QuickSync or GPU acceleration, then performance will be similar to comparable systems. At idle, it is nice and quiet. You may find that it may ramp up from 33 decibels to 41 decibels as it works on something in the background, but it will go back down to 33 decibels quite quickly, and there's no coil whine and the fans didn't cycle aggressively. So the chassis is made of black plastic, but it's nice and clean looking, so it will blend into most use case situations if you're using it at work or at school. And you have a central HP logo here, which is reflective, and that's quite nice. It's very mirrored. Now of course it does show a few smudges, so you will be having to use a cloth to wipe it clean very quite often. And down at the hinge here you do have Pavilion written on it, and this actually is a little bit more sturdy, the hinge. It is still a one-piece central hinge, but it is a little bit more sturdy than previous. So we have a plastic keyboard deck, and compared to the 17-inch I checked out before, it doesn't rattle, so it's pretty good there. And the trackpad as well, it's an Elan trackpad, Elan drivers. Actually that works not too bad. Of course it's plastic at this price point, and that doesn't really rattle either, so actually I was quite pleasantly surprised. The keys, I like them, they're okay, good tactile feedback. I do like the white paint around the keys, it's pretty nice. You've got a separate number pad for those who like to have that. My only criticism perhaps would be that the power button here is rather flush. I mean, at least it's separate to the rest of the keyboard compared to the Omen, which is embedded over here. It is separate, but it is pretty flush. You can't feel it, but it is there. It's nice, and it does light up. There's a little white light on it. Now the key lighting is 2 levels of key lighting here, and it's white, but I like that. Now what you got here at the top, it's not air venting. It is actually the speaker grill. The Bang & Olufsen speakers are average. I would say that the Omen speakers are better, and unfortunately the system failed my real-time audio latency test. So I wanted to give you a representation of what the panel is like, and alongside it I've got the new Omen 15 with the Intel CPU. Now panel wise they look pretty similar, to be honest. I can't tell much difference between them. They're both very good. Now the Omen uses an LG panel, whilst the Pavilion uses a BOE panel, and it's a decent panel. Now they're both 144 Hz, and the BOE panel on the Pavilion has 94% of sRGB, 70% of Adobe RGB, and 70% of the P3 color space. And also its peak brightness is 323 nits, so it is pretty decent, and it has a contrast of 980 to 1. It's a decent gaming panel, and it's actually quite good for content creation as well. In my ghosting test, I compared it against the 144Hz HP Omen 15, and it was perhaps marginally worse, but not by a huge amount. So the screen is actually fairly rigid. It's much better than previous generations because we do have a bigger hinge here now, and the bezels are nice and slim, and the webcam is up at the top. So we have a 720p webcam. That's not super sharp, but it gets the job done. What I do like, when you're typing, it's fairly quiet because it says noise cancelling microphone as well, and that does quite a decent job. So all of the USB ports are 5 gigabits per second, and on the left hand side we have a single type A port, which can be used to say charge your cell phone when the laptop's in sleep, and behind that we have the power jack. So on the right hand side we have an HDMI 2.0. We have a second USB type A, so there's only 2 of those. Now here we have an Ethernet jack with a flap at the bottom. Next to that we have the USB type C port, and that carries video of DisplayPort 1.4. And here at the front, which I do like the position of it, is the SD card reader. Now it does accept cards all of the way in as well, which is nice, but it doesn't go in smoothly. It sort of scrapes the card as it goes in. And its weight, £4.16 with the 200 watt power brick, £6 5 ounces. The back panel is made out of plastic, and you get inside by removing some Phillips head screws, and it's actually a little bit easier than previous. I started off here at the front corner. You also get some good air intakes here, so that is nice, and the rear foot is higher than the front feet, so it does allow some good airflow inside. And once you're inside, you get a 52 watt hour battery here. It's a 3-cell battery, and actually surprisingly it lasted me 4 hours 10 minutes at 40% brightness streaming YouTube, so that was pretty decent. Now you do only get the one M.2 slot, but they do give you all the necessary hardware here to mount a 2.5-inch base drive, so you can put a mechanical drive or a SATA SSD in should you wish. Now you do have 2 sticks of RAM, 2 slots. That's great. Now the RAM in here is 3200 megahertz, but of course it'll default down to 2933, and you get a Realtek Wi-Fi card. Now fortunately you can replace that, because I was getting some serious lag playing some games, and I was about 40 feet away from the access point and going through a floor. Speeds were okay certainly when I was closer, but it didn't work so well when you're further away. Now you do have this type of cooling system here with 2 heat pipes through 1 larger heatsink. Now normally I'm not a great fan of this type of system, but it does cool pretty well. Of course we've got a 45 watt CPU, and that's what pretty much to have the PL1 at, and a 60 watt GPU, and it does handle that pretty nicely. So how would I sum up the HP Pavilion 16 Gaming? First off, I must say I am pleased that they improved the hinge. It does make the screen flex less when you open and close the laptop. I am also very impressed with the way HP configured it. There is no need to tweak it, as it runs fine out of the box, and this must increase its general appeal. I recall the 2018 HP Pavilion that ran super hot, and there were no such concerns this time around, and I think it's a great gaming laptop. Could it cool the full 80 watt GTX 1660 Ti? Well, I think with the way that they have the cooling system, that extra 20 watts will make the CPU heat up a little bit too much. Personally, I do prefer the separate fan heatsink setup of most other notebooks, but for the hardware this has, it copes pretty well. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.